Good morning, children. As promised, I am back, and on the last turn I told you to take up metaphors. The amount that is given over here, the portion that is given over here in form of an activity at the end of the lesson, a letter to God. So I would like to, wind up this lesson with this last activity metaphor, and after that I will take up a poem. As it's written over here, metaphor, it's a Greek term. Metaphor comes from the Greek word that tells us to transfer. If you are transferring something, like when we are transferring ideas or a quality or feature of one thing to another thing, that becomes a metaphor. And before we go into metaphor, let me tell you very clearly that as in language, parts of speech are very important. Likewise in poetry, parts of speech, figures of speech are very important. Under parts of speech we have noun, pronoun and all that. Likewise we have figures of speech. So these are the two vital things of English language. That one is, as far as literature is concerned, poetry or prose of English language. You see, our syllabus is English language and literature. So we can go with that in that way. So when we are trying to cover up prose section in textbooks, like the way we did in the last lesson, we took up parts of speech, and whenever we are going through a lesson, we should try to identify the different parts of speech available in the text, in the paragraph or in written form. We'll do that. Likewise in poetry or even in some dramas, in some novels, we have certain figures of speech. Like irony, if you remember, you might have heard, you might have gone through, or idioms. They are actually figures of speech. But then from the very beginning we have been told about them as a separate identity or entity. So we keep on learning them as idioms, as phrases, as irony. But actually they all are figures of speech. We have so many figures of speech, like we have a simile, we have alliteration, metaphor, personification, hyperbole, onomatopoeia, oxymoron, pun, irony, idioms, and phrases sometimes. So as far as your topic is concerned, metaphor, before we go into metaphor, let me give you a slight intro of some of the important figures of speech you should know at least. We have many kinds of figures of speech. But then the most common figures of speech are like simile, metaphor, personification, hyperbole, and onomatopoeia, right? So these I would like to tell you in short. And at last we'll be talking about metaphor. So let's see, simile actually, when we compare two things, if you want to just understand, no need to go into definition, try to grasp it. Try to develop your own understanding. Whenever it is said simile, you can recall those understanding, that understanding which you are going to learn right now. So when we compare two things through, using these vital words, these two vital words that I'm going to mention, one is like and the other is as. So when we are comparing two things by using as or like, so there we can say that there we have simile. For example, Lencho was as strong as an ox. What do we have there? We have simile. Lencho was as strong as an ox. Or you can say Lencho was as tall as mountains. Or we can say Lencho was as brave as a lion. So what actually are we doing? We are trying to compare Lencho with lion by using the word as, or sometimes like. He fought like a tiger. So what do we have there? We have simile. So most common figures of speech I'm trying to discuss. Like one of them is simile. Obviously it is there in your syllabus. In some of your textbook poems or poetry, it is available there. The simile, you must know simile. Try to keep in mind that if there is like or as, you can easily identify that there we have simile. Now then comes personification, but before that, let me tell you something about metaphor. In metaphor also, we do the same thing. We compare to things. In simile, what do? We compare two things, TWO, two things. And in metaphor, we are also once again comparing two things, two things, not TWO things, TO things. So keep in mind, in simile you have like and as, but in metaphor you have only, you have nothing. You do not have like, you do not have as. You cannot use these two words in metaphor. Try to understand with an example that suppose Alex is a chicken. We don't say that Alex is like a chicken. We say Alex is a chicken. So what do we get the meaning there? That Alex is coward. Right? Chickens are supposed to be coward. So Alex is coward. He is not brave. So Alex is a chicken. Likewise, we have love is a battlefield. Love is a battlefield. And one of the famous lines, by William Wordsworth, that is, all the world is a stage. So all the world is a stage. S-T-A-G-E, stage. So these are some examples of metaphor. So comparison is there. In simile we have comparison, in metaphor we have comparison, but in simile we take help of like and as, so that you can identify simile quite easily. And on the other hand, in metaphor also we compare, but then we do not, we can compare one thing with so many things, or better we avoid like and as. And if we smell that there is a comparison without like, without as, so that is metaphor. Then comes personification, when we represent a non-human entity as human. But there we find personification. Like when we say the car died in the middle of the road. Car is not a human being, but then we are trying to say in such a way as if the car has become a human. So the car died. We never say the car died. The car broke down, or the car smashed or damaged. Instead of saying all this, what do we say? The car died. So we are trying to personify car to a human being. So keep in mind, whenever we are trying to represent, or when we are trying to show something, a non-human entity as human, so there we are doing personification. And then comes hyperbole. It's quite easy. Hyperbole, you can understand, means to excess something, to give something in excess, to be in excess, or to exaggerate something, to say in a more typical way. You can understand with an example, like his grandfather is older than the hills. Hills, His grandfather is older than the hills. Or you can say, he has become as thin as a toothpick. He was very healthy, but what we see that he has become as thin as a toothpick. And then last we have onomatopoeia. Onomatopoeia, it's a speech where words indicate, sounds. When you smell sounds, when you're getting sounds, when you feel that there is a sound, onomatopoeia is there. Sound is there. They indicate sounds, onomatopoeias. Like the bees buzzed. The leaves were rustling. He closed the book with a thud. The dog started barking. So barking, thud, rustling, buzz. These are the examples of sounds. So here we have onomatopoeia. So onomatopoeia, hyperbole, personification, metaphor, and simile. In particular, let's talk about metaphor. Because one activity, the entire activity is given in this lesson, onomatopoeia. So let's wind up with one or two examples to this activity. So, as I told you, it comes from the Greek word, and that means to transfer. So when we compare two things, or ideas, or qualities, or features, or when we try to transfer the quality of one thing to another, then it becomes a metaphor. Like the leg or the table. Well, tables have no legs, but then leg means their support. So tables are supported by some sort of wood. So there we used to say the leg of the wood, or in the heart of the city. Well, city has got no heart, but then we are trying to establish a comparison between the heart and the city. Means the most important, or the central thing, or the central area. When we say that school is in the heart of the city, that means the central point of that area is that school. So the heart of the city is like the table. In pairs, let's find out metaphors from the story to complete the table below. So one example is given over here. So with that example, I hope you'll be able to do that. Let us do one or two. Try to get at the same time you have to guess the quality that is being compared. Quality at the same time you have to find out. Like when we say cloud, it's an object cloud, and then we have huge mountains of clouds. So clouds have been compared with mountains, huge mountains. So here the quality of hugeness of the mountains. What quality we are getting? We are getting the quality of hugeness. Likewise, in the second sentence we have raindrops. So raindrops, there we find they have been compared with new coins, raindrops. And the quality of new coins, or say raindrops, as valuable as coins. Raindrops are as valuable as coins. When Lynch says that they are not the raindrops, but they are the new coins which are falling. So what actually are we doing? We are trying to transfer one's quality to another. Like when we say hailstones, what do we understand? That they have been compared with the very large hailstones. Actually, it was the quality of ice, which was as if falling with the rain. It was raining, but at the same time, as if the ice started falling down. So that is the quality of hailstones. They have been figured as ice hailstones. Likewise, we have locust, and then they have been given a metaphor like a plague of locusts. Right? And again, if you put an object in object column plague, then there you get the plague of locusts. And plague of locusts means here, what do we have? That as we know that plague had been a pandemic or epidemic. Earlier it was known as epidemic, but then nowadays it is known as pandemic. Pandemic, like corona. What is it? This is a pandemic. It's an epidemic. Then it has been given a new name. It has been coined a new name, pandemic. Both are same, epidemic or pandemic. Because of the rapidness, and as you can say that more people are, dying because of corona, so it has become pandemic. But it's an epidemic. So plague is there. Then if we compare an ox of a man, so obviously the object should be ox. So what do we understand? That in metaphor column we have huge mountains of clouds for cloud, we have new coins for raindrops, we have very large hailstones for hailstones, we have plague of locusts for locusts, we have plague of locusts for plague, and now an ox of a man for ox. So this way, and an ox of a man means what? What quality do we get here? We get the strength of Lenchu. He was the strength of his family. He was the head of his family. So that is the quality, an ox of a man. So oak, the object ox, is this has been as if transferred to get the quality of a man. through ideas, that he was an ox of a man. And he was the chief of his family, he was the strength of his family, he was the head of his family for all his survivors. So this way we can complete this metaphor, and you have to do it in your copy because these are very important activities. In exams they may come up, and again on the next Wednesday when I will take up your second online test, there in that also I would put up what I have discussed today. So with this I would like to close the chapter finally, and tomorrow I'll take up the very first poem, Dust of Snow by Robert Frost. Till then,